So recently, I've seen a lot of videos about the future of One Piece. More specifically, a couple videos speculating on the Straw Hats' bounties or strength post-Wano. But in today's video, I wanted to take things one step further and talk about the strength of one Roronoa Zoro in the epilogue or end of One Piece. Now I know, we are definitely nowhere near the end of One Piece and nothing's for certain, especially an epilogue even existing. But in this hypothetical, what I'm talking about is Zoro's strength after the Straw Hats disband, after the final war, after the One Piece is found, and in particular, why I think Zoro may in fact become the strongest character ever. Now hold on, I know what you're thinking, this sounds a bit extreme, but I promise you, by the end of this video, you will most definitely agree with me. So to predict how strong Roronoa Zoro will be, there's a couple things we have to establish, like what's Zoro's dream, how strong is he currently, and how will he grow after he helps Luffy achieve his dream. First off is the most important piece of evidence as to why Zoro will become the strongest, and it's his dream. Now, I know that dreams aren't set in stone, but as a community, I'm pretty sure that we're all in agreement that all of the Straw Hats will undoubtedly achieve their dream. So for Zoro, it should really be no different. The most common reason why people may doubt Zoro is they don't fully understand his dream. So to many readers of One Piece, Zoro simply just wants to become the world's strongest swordsman, which means that he would need to beat Mihawk or at least surpass him and beat someone else who defeated him. But that's not really what Zoro's dream is. See, it's actually much more than that, it's much harder than that. Because in Zoro's flashback with Kuina, we finally get a glimpse at his real dream. After fighting with Kuina and losing numerous times, they have a conversation where Kuina gives up. But Zoro tries to encourage her, saying that they would make a promise with each other that one day, one of them would become the greatest swordsman ever. Now, initially, this may not seem like a big change, but changing his scope from the world's greatest swordsman to the greatest swordsman ever really changes everything. So let's just take a step back for a moment and look at some of the people who we think were the strongest of all time in One Piece. We have the Pirate King Goldie Roger and his rivals Whitebeard, Garp, and Rocks. Now these four are unanimously kind of considered some of the four strongest people in the series, and it doesn't really matter who you think is the strongest out of them, because they should all be relatively close to one another. But Roger, the Pirate King, one of the top four in the verse ever, was a swordsman. And now with Zoro wanting to be the greatest swordsman ever, that would mean that he would need to be stronger than Roger. Now again, I know what you're thinking. How could a right hand be this strong? Well, as generations go on, people do get stronger. And we've already seen a precedent for this. Characters like Rayleigh and Ben Beckman, who were the right hands, are pretty much portrayed as being relative to their captain. And the Straw Hat crew seems to be pretty much the same as Goldie Roger's crew and Shanks' crew. So Zoro being up there with his captain should really be no different. And besides just that, we already got some precedent of Zoro being kind of equal to Luffy. Whether that be from Whiskey Peak when they fought, or data books in which Oda has said they were equal, Zoro and Luffy have always been neck and neck, and Oda's been especially careful to make sure not to show which one of them is really stronger. And even if you think Luffy is stronger than Zoro, it doesn't really matter, because if Luffy is a 10, then Zoro is like a solid 9.5. And now you're probably thinking, well, if you think Luffy's stronger than Zoro, how can Zoro ever be the strongest of all time? We'll get into all of that a bit later towards the conclusion of the video, where I talk about how Zoro will surpass Luffy. But for now, all you really need to know is if becoming the greatest swordsman ever is Zoro's dream, there's no reason that he shouldn't also become stronger than the Pirate King, who was indeed a swordsman. Now, since I'm arguing that Zoro may be the strongest character ever, by the end of the series, I think it's pretty important to establish two people's current strength. The first is Zoro himself, and the second is the man he will surpass, Dracul Mihawk. The one thing that we should all be in agreement about is that Zoro will definitely surpass Mihawk. Whether that means Zoro will directly fight and win against Mihawk, or Zoro will beat someone who already beat Mihawk, Zoro will definitely be above Mihawk in terms of strength by the end of the series. So now we just have to figure out how strong is Mihawk. I don't really like getting into this conversation a lot, but it has to be done, and it's the Mihawk-Shanks debate. I'm not really going to go into too much detail. Whether you're team Mihawk or your team Shanks, it doesn't really matter. I'll just go on the assumption that they're relative to one another in terms of strength. Because all we know is that Mihawk and Shanks fought and they were legendary battles. If two people fought had legendary battles, I have to assume they're extreme or high diff fights, and since Mihawk is known as the world's strongest swordsman, he definitely won them. So for now, I'm just going under the assumption that Mihawk is very, very close to Shanks in terms of power. And as all of you know, Shanks is a Yonko, one of the 4 emperors of the sea, and there's a possibility that he may be the strongest. Now, while this part is definitely just conjecture, we did get a hint from Kaido. He was talking about the people that could fight him or the people that I guess could hang with him, and Shanks was one of the 5 people that he mentioned. And being mentioned here means a lot. It means that Shanks either beat Kaido completely or Kaido won and it was an extreme diff fight, but either way that should put Shanks either equal to Kaido or slightly above or below him. But from what we know about Marineford, Shanks somehow intercepted and completely stopped Kaido from showing up. I wouldn't be surprised if this means that Shanks is indeed stronger than Kaido. So if we scale Mihawk to Shanks, who is above Kaido, it would pretty much imply that Mihawk is at minimum some sort of Yonko level, and potentially one of the strongest, if not the strongest, in that tier. And now this all leads back to my original statement of the Straw Hats and their dreams, because we all know Zoro will most definitely surpass Mihawk, meaning by the end of the series he should be around the strength of the current 4 emperors. But becoming one of the 4 strongest is one thing in itself, but how exactly would Zoro go from that to becoming the strongest person in the history of One Piece? One thing that I think is pretty commonly overlooked in the community is certain nuances in Zoro's character. Of course, all of the Straw Hats have a desire or a dream, and being a fictional shonen story, of course they're driven to achieve that dream, but Zoro is slightly different. Because unlike the other Straw Hats, unlike a lot of characters just period, he's not just carrying the weight of his own dream, he's also carrying the weight of his childhood friend Kuina. His dream is not just for himself, it's for both of them, so it's something that he must achieve, and it's to become the strongest. And while I already talked about this a little bit earlier, the other nuance to Zoro's character is actually his motivation for wanting to become the strongest, and it's fear. I went into this a lot more in my No One Understands video, link in the top right corner, make sure to check it out, but the gist of it is that Zoro doesn't see himself as strong. In fact, his desire to get stronger comes from a place of a fear of losing. So Zoro isn't someone with overwhelming confidence or unnecessary bravado. In fact, he's someone who only wants to get strong so he doesn't have to lose again. And the reason why I'm bringing any of this up in the first place is to get across the point that Zoro will never stop training. You see, Zoro is a character who we've seen constantly training, which means he's constantly getting stronger. You can argue that the weightlifting doesn't do a lot, but I think Zoro wouldn't do something that's useless, meaning that Zoro has never stopped training from the moment he was introduced in the story. So then I ask the question, why would Zoro stop training after Luffy fulfills his dreams? And this directly counters the only real argument I hear against why Zoro can't be the strongest, and it's that Zoro will not surpass Luffy. But I think Zoro will surpass Luffy because I think Luffy will become inactive by the end of One Piece. Now, I'm not claiming that Luffy's going to die, I'm not claiming that he's going to stop pirating, but I think that most of the obstacles that he has to overcome would end, and he won't continuously grow in power anymore. Because Luffy isn't like most other protagonists, and he's definitely not like Zoro. Because Luffy doesn't get strong just for the sake of it, in fact, The only time that we see him train is after he gets defeated and he needs to achieve a specific goal. So after Luffy achieves his dream, he'll peak and he won't get stronger. Zoro will be stronger than Mihawk by the end, but he will not stop there. He'll continue to train and get stronger until he becomes the strongest. That's gonna be all for this video, and as always, those are just my thoughts. Now let me hear yours in the comments section down below. Follow me on Twitter at TokyoTron. It's always a fun time over there, and make sure to like and subscribe.